Welcome back to our channel. Robert Redford, a Hollywood icon known for his enduring contributions to art and culture in addition to his memorable roles. Stories of suffering and grief are hidden behind the endearing smile and a career spanning over 60 years. Redford has triumphed against his illness, the death of loved ones, and nearly broken times to become a symbol of not only skill but also resiliency. What actually transpired behind the glistening lights, then? How did he manage to juggle his personal life, art, and fame? We and #039LL explore the little-known details, secrets, and obscure facets of Robert Redford and #039's life in this video. Together, let and #039s set out on this exciting adventure. Early life. Robert Redford was born into a working-class family in Santa Monica, California, on August 18, 1936. His mother, Martha Redford, was the family and #039's pillar of support, while his father, Charles Redford, worked as an accountant for Standard Oil. The Redford family was and #039 rich during the Great Depression, but they were close and loved each other. Redford and #039's mother, a strong, upbeat, and resolute woman, was the center of his universe, who never wavered in her belief that her son would achieve great things. But gradually, disease and death dominated Robert Redford and #039's life. When Redford was 11 years old, he got polio, a deadly illness that terrified families before immunizations were readily accessible. He woke up one morning unable to move and having trouble opening his eyes. He remained bedridden for 2 weeks, surrounded by anxiety and confusion, and his family was and #039's sure if he would fully recover. Being immobile, both a mental and physical hardship to a boy of an age when exploration and movement were vital. Even though Redford and #039's suffering was not as bad as that of others who needed iron lungs, those times had a profound impact on him and gave him the fortitude and perseverance to face adversity. Characteristics he would carry with him for the rest of his life. But there was still more sorrow to come. Redford suffered an irreversible loss only a few years after he recovered from polio. His mother, Martha, gave birth to twins who did not live 8 years prior, and she died of complications from a blood illness in 1955 when she was 18 years old. His best friend and mother were both lost when Martha passed away. She was always the first to see his individuality, thinking Redford had a gift and that he might accomplish great things in life if he worked hard enough. Redford felt adrift after losing the one person who was always there to support and encourage him. This deep sorrow influenced his future outlook on life and art. But Redford had already experienced another loss that he would always remember before losing his mother. The passing of David Redford, his uncle. Redford viewed David as a second father figure in his life because he was his father and #039's brother. Uncle David, a man who was not only skilled on the football field but also fluent in 4 languages and a World War II soldier, was a symbol of bravery and adventure to Redford. Redford and #039's passion for sports and culture was ignited by spending afternoons playing football and conversing with Uncle David. However, terrible news came in 1945, right on New Year and #039's day. A sniper had slain David while he and his companions were on a covert assignment in Germany. When Robert Redford was 8 years old, he experienced his first loss in life, the death of the uncle he had always looked up to. Redford and #039's spirit was deeply scarred by the anguish of Uncle David and #039's and his mother Martha and #039's deaths. He was raised in a Scottish-American and Irish-American household where emotional control and perseverance were valued. The Redfords didn't and #039's talk about suffering. They didn't and #039's weep or grumble. Rather, they quietly accepted it. There were no sobered confessions of grief when Martha died, only a silent attempt to continue. Redford had to learn how to deal with loneliness and grief on his own. A lesson he would subsequently use to his complex and intensely emotional parts. Redford was not broken by these defeats. Conversely, they contributed to the development of the man and artist he would become. Redford was taught to face the hard truths of life at a young age, and these challenges aided in the development of his artistic sensibility and his capacity to portray sincere feelings in every part. Redford did not accept pain as a natural part of life. It was the foundation of his fortitude and the impetus behind his progress toward leaving the legacy he would. Early career Robert Redford entered a new stage of his life with a rebellious spirit and a determination to forge his own path after suffering severe losses as a child. He received a baseball scholarship to attend the University of Colorado in Boulder in the late 1950s. Redford was anticipated to succeed in sports because of his exceptional talent on the field. But his life went in a totally opposite direction. He had a rough experience at the University of Colorado. Redford soon lost sight of his studies and athletics in favor of parties, drinking, and having a good time. His already chaotic lifestyle deteriorated when he joined the Kappa Sigma fraternity. Due to his excessive drinking and reckless lifestyle, he was expelled from college, forfeited his scholarship, and had a psychological crisis at an early age. Redford, however, took a different route rather than allowing failure to crush him. He set out on a voyage throughout Europe with a sense of rebellion and a desire to explore. His horizons were broadened and his love of art was rekindled during this time. Redford experienced art, culture, and the way of life of free-spirited artists while in Europe in addition to learning about life. He studied painting in Florence, Italy, before relocating to Paris, where he furthered his artistic development. He discovered that art might be the path to redemption and personal development throughout this voyage, which was not just an investigation of the outer world but also a quest for himself. Redford returned to the United States and concentrated on acting, which was quite different from what was initially expected of him in sports. He made the decision to attend New York and #039's American Academy of Dramatic Arts, where he rapidly refined his acting abilities. Redford received the crucial start he needed to launch his acting career at the Academy. He transformed from a disobedient young man into a prospective actor with a genuine and meaningful acting technique. Professional achievement. Redford and #039's performance as Paul Bratter in Neil Simon and #039's play Barefoot in the Park in 1963 was one of his first significant achievements. Redford was a rising Broadway performer who starred in this comedy about a wedding couple. In addition to being a financial success, Barefoot in the Park demonstrated Redford and #039's ability to play characters with nuance, humor, and sincere feeling. Hollywood took notice of his theatrical triumph, which paved the way for a bright future in movies. Redford was always cautious when selecting roles, though, even at this early stage. He preferred characters with depth to ones with flimsy gloss. When Redford played the part of Sundance Kid in the 1969 movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, his career took a significant turn. In addition to being one of Hollywood and #039's most recognizable westerns, this was the movie that made Redford a household name all over the world. In the movie, Redford portrayed Sundance Kid, a likable criminal with a conscience who accompanied Paul Newman and #039's character Butch Cassidy on his perilous yet fashionable exploits. Both on and off the screen, Redford and Newman made the ideal combo. They became a magnetic force in the movie because of their flawless chemistry. They developed a connection that lasted for decades, going beyond their professional relationship. Not only was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid a huge box office hit, but it also made Redford one of Hollywood and #039's most sought-after actors. Redford and #039's success, however, extended beyond a single role. With a string of iconic films in the 1970s, Redford rose to prominence as one of Hollywood and #039's leading performers. He worked with Paul Newman on The Sting once more in 1973. The story of two accomplished con artists hatching a convoluted vengeance plot is told in this film, which is set in the 1930s. Redford was able to shine again in his role as the shrewd and humorous scam artist Johnny Hooker. In addition to being a huge box office success, The Sting earned Redford his first Oscar nomination for Best Actor and won 7 Oscars, including Best Picture. Redford and Barbra Streisand co-starred in the romance film The Way We Were that same year. In the movie, two people with different personalities have a passionate but tumultuous love affair. This time, Redford moved viewers with his sincere depiction of the unseen sufferings of love in addition to captivating them with his attractiveness. Furthermore, movies like 3 Days of the Condor, 1975, a gripping spy thriller, and Jeremiah Johnson, 1972, which tells the story of a man and #039's lonesome life and wilderness adventures, further demonstrated Redford and #039's versatility by demonstrating his ability to subtly change the emotions of his characters. He contributed a distinct style to each part, enabling viewers to sense the sincerity and complexity of each persona. The 1976 political thriller All the President and #039's Men, which was inspired on the Watergate affair, is among Redford and #039's most famous works. Redford played Bob Woodward, one of 2 Washington Post reporters who looked into the controversy and revealed its startling truth. Redford gave a somber and concentrated performance that effectively told the subject of power and press transparency. In addition to being a box office hit, the movie received positive reviews from critics and took home 4 Oscars, including Best Screenplay. Demonstrated his acting maturity. In addition to playing a committed investigative journalist, he gave the movie emotional depth by capturing the tension, dread, and belief in justice. Redford and #039's reputation as a serious and accomplished actor was bolstered by this part, which was one of the most significant in his career. From actor to talented director after his acting career peaked, Robert Redford chose to explore directing instead. It wasn't an #039's an easy choice, but for Redford, who is constantly looking for new challenges and ways to express his creativity, getting behind the camera was not only a logical next step, but also a means of expressing a more profound viewpoint on narrative. Ordinary People, Redford and #039's 1980 directing debut, signaled his move from actor to director. This family drama focused on the complicated psychological issues among the surviving family members as they dealt with the sadness of losing their oldest son in an accident. Unlike many Hollywood movies, Redford didn't and #039's pick a simple or dazzling plot. Rather, he concentrated on the nuanced facets of emotion and the psychological scars that the family was unable to overcome, which were depicted vividly by the characters and #039 performances. Redford established himself as a filmmaker with a profound awareness of people and life from his very first project. Instead of using spectacular shots or ostentatious techniques, he relied on genuine speech, subtle angles, and the nuanced expression of emotions through the eyes and actions of the characters. Under Redford and #039's leadership, Common People achieved great achievement and won numerous accolades from critics. Redford was able to become one of Hollywood and #039's gifted directors after the film won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. After Ordinary People became a hit, Redford went on to demonstrate his directorial abilities in numerous other movies. One of his most well-known creations was the 1992 movie A River Runs Through It, which was adapted from the Norman Maclean book. 2 brothers who were raised in Montana in the early 1900s under the tight supervision of their father, a Presbyterian minister, are the subject of the film. A river flows through, and it is well known for its breathtaking natural landscapes and subtly moving narratives. It is more than just a family tale, it is also a meditation on maturation and a passion for the natural world. Redford used his talents to create an emotionally charged tale that combined nature and human connection. In order to represent the flow of life and its erratic changes, the story and #039's peaceful river vistas and breathtaking mountains became essential. Redford depicted the 2 brothers and #039 interactions, internal conflicts, and affection for their father in a sensitive way that was both accessible and meaningful. In addition to being praised for its aesthetics, the movie was nominated for Best Oscar, showcasing Redford and #039's ability to combine storytelling with art. A river runs through it strengthened his reputation as a visionary filmmaker who can produce timeless masterpieces. Another piece that demonstrated Redford and #039's ability to handle intricate moral and media-related issues was Quiz Show, which he directed in 1994. The movie recounts the scandal on the well-known quiz show 21 from the 1950s, where the creators rigged the game to increase viewership. In addition to becoming a media controversy, Quiz Show also reflected on moral dilemmas and the effects of wealth, fame, and power on individuals. Redford applied his abilities to examine the complex tales of morality and accountability with Quiz Show. Redford and #039's ability to select tales with depth and substantial societal relevance was once again confirmed when the picture was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director Oscars. Robert Redford and #039's directing has long been admired for its nuance and capacity to portray real feelings. He handles characters and circumstances with gentleness rather than forcing overly dramatic emotions. Redford consistently prioritizes the plot and characters, employing sound and visuals to provide the most genuine emotional atmosphere. This makes it possible for his pieces to appeal to audiences and #039 emotions without the need for intricate visual effects. Robert Redford has demonstrated that he is not only a gifted artist but also an exceptional storyteller in his roles as an actor and director. He is one of the most well-known figures in international cinema and personal life because of his capacity to produce works that are emotionally complex and significant. Robert Redford has had both highs and lows in his personal life in addition to his stellar career. In addition to profoundly poignant moments, Redford has gone through a lot of emotional ups and downs, but his first marriage to Lola Van Wagenen was one of the most important ones. Redford was still a young actor attempting to establish himself when they first met in the late 1950s. They were legally wed in a modest ceremony in Las Vegas in 1958. Their marriage was a deep bond between two people who had similar perspectives on life and family, in addition to being a tale of love between two young people. One of Redford and #039's biggest supporters in his early career was the historian and social activist Lola Van Wagenen. Redford was making a name for himself in the very competitive film profession, so their existence together was not easy. However, together, they overcame these obstacles and created a solid family with Scott, Shauna, James, and Amy as their 4 children. But sorrow and grief also characterized their family life. Their first tragedy occurred in 1959 when Scott, Redford, and Lola and #039's eldest son died of SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome, at the age of 10 weeks. Scott and #039's parents were very excited and eager for him to be born. First-time fatherhood is always a very emotional experience, and for Redford, it was a moment of total joy following a number of personal setbacks in his life and work. However, that joy was fleeting. Without any prior notice, they found Scott and #039's breathing had stopped in his crib one morning. Redford and Lola were shocked by Scott and #039's unexpected death. The loss of his child was an unfathomable shock to Redford. Because of the lack of understanding at the time regarding CDS, Redford and Lola blamed themselves despite the fact that they were powerless to stop the terrible catastrophe. For the first time, Redford, who had always been resilient in the face of adversity, felt completely helpless. That anguish turned into a psychological scar since he was unable to shield his son. That would never get better. Redford hardly discussed this loss in the decades that followed. Only years later did he disclose that Scott and #039's passing had left him with an unhealing wound that he had always concealed. When their second son, James Redford, was born with a string of severe health issues 3 years after Scott and #039's passing, Redford and Lola experienced similar fears. James was given a diagnosis of respiratory distress syndrome, a serious lung ailment that poses a life-threatening risk to babies. The family was once again plagued by the recurring worry of dying. Despite surviving this first threat, James and #039's life was never simple. He suffered from a number of ailments throughout the years, including liver disease and ulcerative colitis, which significantly weakened his body. James eventually needed 2 liver transplants in order to survive. Redford was more than just a dad. Devoted and patient, he was his son and #039's constant companion in his fight for survival. He once said that, as he watched his kid die, those were the most agonizing months of his life. James and #039 health problems persisted even after he recovered from the surgeries and went on to have a prosperous career as a filmmaker. James died of bile duct cancer in 2020 at the age of 58, a consequence of the illnesses he had battled since he was a young boy. Redford and #039's heart and his family were deeply saddened by James and #039 passing. In addition to being Redford and #039's son, James was also his spiritual heir. He had collaborated with his father on a number of environmental and motion picture projects and had experienced the grief of losing 2 boys. When his daughter Shauna Redford lost her partner, Sid Wells, in a murder case in 1983, Robert Redford also suffered another sorrow. Sid, a bright student of journalism, was shot dead inexplicably in his University of Colorado residence when he and Shauna were enrolled in classes. Shauna and the rest of the Redford family were left in a state of bewilderment and sorrow as the case became into one of the most well-known unsolved homicides. A gifted artist, Shauna always sought to disassociate herself from her father and #039's celebrity. But Sid and #039's tragedy left her in a state of protracted grief. Being a parent, Redford was acutely aware of his daughter and #039's suffering, which increased his awareness of how fleeting life is. Even though he was a well-liked celebrity, the deaths in his family always made him more modest and made him value every second spent with his loved ones. These losses weren't and #039's separate incidents, rather, they became profoundly embedded in his spirit and shaped his outlook on life and his work. He was not broken by these catastrophes. Rather, they inspired him to look for harmony and a more profound purpose in his life. However, Redford and Lola made the decision to get a divorce in 1985 after almost 30 years of marriage. Redford has consistently expressed thanks and admiration for their relationship, despite the dissolution of their marriage, confirming that the two remained close even after their split. Redford and #039's quest for personal fulfillment continued after his divorce from Lola. He started dating German artist Sibylle Zegers in 1996, and the two would go on to lead a long and fulfilling life together. In 2009, Redford and Zegers were legally wed in a modest ceremony in Germany. Redford was already more experienced and wiser about relationships and life when he got married for the second time. He and Sibylle worked together to preserve the environment, a cause they both held in high regard. They also had similar ideals regarding art and the natural world. In addition to being Redford and #039's life companion, Sibylle worked with him on numerous environmental and creative endeavors. At their 6,000-acre ranch in Utah, they created a serene lifestyle where Redford could get away from the spotlight and take in the serenity and quiet of the natural world. After the turbulent events in his life, Redford found serenity with Sibylle, and the two of them forged an amazing and creative existence. Robert Redford and #039's ability to shield himself and his family and #039's privacy from the demands of celebrity is among his most remarkable qualities. Redford is one of Hollywood and #039's biggest stars, yet he has always kept his personal life private and away from the public and media. He seldom ever released information about his personal life or made an appearance in tabloids. In addition to protecting his family, his unwavering commitment to keeping his personal life private allowed him to strike a balance between work and life. Redford has always held the view that celebrity should not overshadow one and #039's personal life and is merely a component of one and #039's work. Redford made the decision to live modestly in near nature, where he might find inspiration and serenity, rather than under the bright lights of Hollywood. Sundance and social contributions. In addition to his fame as an actor and filmmaker, Robert Redford has made a big impact on society, particularly through his support of independent filmmaking and environmental preservation. He established the Sundance Film Festival in 1981. A location for independent filmmakers that supports the growth of artistic filmmaking. Young filmmakers like Steven Soderbergh and Quentin Tarantino now have a place at Sundance where they may freely express themselves without the commercial demands of Hollywood. Redford has been a prominent environmental activist outside of his film business. He has taken part in a number of efforts to save the environment from industrialization and #039's destructive effects, such as being against the Keystone XL oil pipeline proposal and nuclear energy development. Additionally, he has supported education in their communities and helped preserve Native American culture, demonstrating his special care for their rights. Redford and #039's work has been crucial in influencing public policy in the areas of human rights and environmental preservation. As a social activist and artist, he has made a significant impact on society through his films and other contributions, helping to create a sustainable future for coming generations. Robert Redford, who is now in his 80s, leads a tranquil and contented existence, emphasizing community service and family values over the spotlight of Hollywood. He has chosen to take a back seat after decades of devoted work in art and society, letting the next generation take center stage and living life with his loved ones. Redford has spent many years living on his expansive ranch in Utah with his wife, Sybil Zagers, where he has found peace and quiet amid the breathtaking scenery. He also established Sundance there, which is more than simply a film festival. It and #039's a genuine artistic community. Redford has steadily stepped back from parts in movies and television shows, but he has never really left the art world. Redford maintains the door open for unique projects that he is genuinely passionate about, even though he announced his retirement in 2018 following his last appearance in The Old Man and the Gun. He has stated that he might think about going back if a project or screenplay really speaks to him. But these days, Redford and #039's main priorities are family and personal endeavors pertaining to artistic growth and environmental preservation. In addition to being a getaway, his property in Utah serves as a hub for conservation efforts and renewable energy projects. Using his voice and power to promote laws that safeguard the environment and fight climate change, Redford is still fighting for environmental causes. Additionally, he is still dedicated to Native American-related causes, supporting cultural preservation and education. Redford still takes part in important Sundance activities as the festival and #039's founder and sole proprietor. His greatest gift to future generations is Sundance, which is more than just a representation of artistic freedom. Young filmmakers who wish to pursue independent art and culture are still encouraged and supported by him, and share inspiring tales with the world. Redford continues to consider initiatives that can increase awareness and have a beneficial impact on society, even though he has scaled back his involvement in the entertainment industry. In an effort to make a long-lasting and sustainable difference in the preservation of nature, he has alluded to the prospect of making more documentaries addressing environmental challenges and climate change. I appreciate you watching. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and click the like button in order to avoid missing out on more fascinating material. Tell us what you think by leaving a comment. I and #039'll see you in the upcoming video. Farewell.